Your work has affected you if it stays with you long after you've finished it. Video games are no different. Over the years, I've played a number of video games that have had that effect on me.
Both the Swapper and That Dragon Cancer infected my thoughts well after I finished them. But another game, equally important to the channel, had a similar effect. The Stanley Parable.
As massive eager fans of mine, you might be saying, wait, I know all of Say Something Nice's videos by heart. He never reviewed the Stanley Parable, and you're right. But the Stanley Parable was the very first video that I ever put on YouTube. And I put it up there as a way to show my friends a game that I couldn't really actually describe to them in words. It kind of kickstarted my desire to create content.
This is the first game that creator Davey Wreden made after the Stanley Parable. The Beginner's Guide is an interactive story game that released in October 2015. The Beginner's Guide is a first-person romp through a narrative. It's light on gameplay mechanics, much like the Stanley Parable, but potentially even more so. There was a lot to think through in Parable, but in this game, Wreden guides you through the events. The story is Wreden's description of his relationship with a friend named Coda. Important. We got that? Okay, good, we can move on then. Coda was a game developer. Wreden tells us that the games we'll be playing are a collection of Coda's work. Furthermore, he tells us that he believes we can learn about the person of Coda by playing his games. So Wreden shows us Coda's games in chronological order, starting with this Counter-Strike map. We are then taken through various games, often surreal in manner, and told about the relationship between Wreden and Coda as time progresses. It is important to note that according to Wreden, Coda never releases his games. He makes them solely for himself. Important? Good. Alright, we can move on then. So now I'm going to begin to talk about the various storytelling elements of this game, which are spoilerific. If you just want a final verdict, please skip to this time here. Okay? No turning back now. You ready? Alright, here we go. One of the early games we see is a game called Escape from Whisper. It's pretty standard until you get to the end. The game bugged out when Coda was designing it, and instead of the game ending, the player floats up through the game world and gets a view of it from above. Wreden believes this had a profound impact on Coda. This theme of hidden space comes back often. In a later game, you go down a hallway solving a puzzle or two, and then it ends. But then Wreden modifies the game for you so you can remove the walls. You can see how massive the game actually was. There was so much that one couldn't see, even though it was merely a wall away. Coda's games all seem to have a deeper metaphorical meaning. There's another interesting theme with Coda's games. Wreden has modified them to be more playable. In this prison scene, the original game had you stand in prison for over an hour. Wreden talked about the debates he had with Coda over whether a game needs to be playable or not. This further emphasizes the idea that Coda was not making these games for public consumption. The final major theme you find in Coda's games as they develop is dialogue. This game here is the best example. It claims to be an online game with messaging, but we learn that of course all of these messages were written by Coda himself. The sheer number of them is astounding, and since the games are not meant to be released, shows an interesting situation where you have a person who's basically talking to themselves through a video game. Speaking of dialogue, this game here shows how people put on a show in what they say, but what they actually mean stays just beneath the surface. Again, this is a person trying to talk to themselves, and seemingly talk themselves through something. As the games go on, you learn that Coda became more and more reserved, and more withdrawn in real life. As this happens, you notice a shift in his games. They get darker, more depressing, more explicit in their message. You see the games of someone who looks like they're sinking. This game here only ends when you admit you can't keep making these games anymore. The game replies by saying, "We are going to be okay." It's powerful. It's the mind of someone struggling, and truthfully, at times it's painful to play. Wreden tells us that he thought he could help by sharing Coda's games, that would draw himself out from himself. Instead, Coda stops making games altogether. Then suddenly Coda sends Wreden his final game. This game is virtually unplayable. It's a dark, foreboding slog. You get to the top of the tower and there's text waiting for you. It's Coda telling Wreden that if he thinks Coda's broken, maybe something's wrong with him. Telling him to stop trying to give his games meaning. Telling him not to speak with him anymore. All the while, Wreden explains that he is the one who needs help. He craves adulation. He validates himself through it and measures himself by it. He was using Coda's games to get that feeling. He feels responsible for Coda quitting games. He wants to apologize. It turns the whole game on its head. So what does it all mean? Well, ask different people and you'll get different answers. The first question is Coda a real person? I'm sure the character model is based off someone in Wreden's life, but I don't believe the actual games we play are real products of a real person. First of all, legally that would present a lot of issues since Wreden is selling a game without consent. Instead, I think Coda is an allegory for Davey Wreden himself. Coda represents a Wreden before he made it big, but when Stanley Parable was released, he felt lonely and isolated. He was unsure how to handle it and used external validation, specifically of his game, to measure himself. This is of course not sustainable, and so he began to recess into himself. He felt lost and alone. Then he questioned what was wrong with him. It was only when he accepted there was nothing wrong and what he was experiencing was natural that things became better for him. Some have similar ideas. Some think Coda is a literal person. Some think he's made up entirely. Wreden refuses to confirm or deny, and he has experience with unreliable narrators. It was basically the basis of Stanley Parable. Either way, the moral is the same. It's the story of a man who used games as an outlet for himself. It's either an example of anxiety and depression, a reliance on external validation, or both. And there's no correct answer, by the way. Whatever you feel during the game is the true reality for you. If Coda is real, if Wreden ever saw this, I would just thank them both. I try to send all my videos to the developers of the games I play because, good or bad, I want to thank them. They allowed me to experience in an experience that they worked on, an experience that we shared. I've struggled with a lot of these themes. We all have. That's what makes this game poignant and hit so hard. We can relate to it. But the game presents a solution I like. Talk. But not to yourself. Talk to somebody. Anybody. Hell, talk to me. I'm happy to listen and answer comments, but talking to anyone can help. It's cliche, but the truth is often we share more than we realize, and someone may have gone through what you're struggling with. If I could speak to Coda, I could share experience of sinking into yourself. If I could talk to Wreden, I could express issues I've had with external validation. And listen, there are issues with this game. Because Wreden walked you through it, it colors your thoughts on it. I would really have liked to figure out a lot of the symbolism on my own. It felt a bit preachy when Wreden kept interjecting with his input. But that may be intentional. And since it's such a personal game, Wreden could very well just be talking it out. It's also not much of a game. Again, much like the Stanley Parable, there are limited mechanics. But the brilliance of it all is that this game just exists, and it's gotten me to sit here and just talk. It truly is incredibly nice. Thank you for joining me, and remember, if you can't say anything nice, hey guys, thanks for watching. I just want to let you know that I was purposefully as light on details for the individual games as possible because I want you guys to experience most of the game firsthand. That said, if you've played it, what's your interpretation? Please, if you're going to comment, put spoiler alerts where necessary. Give everybody else a chance. If you like this video and want to see more, please subscribe. I do video games, but also movies, basketball, and just all around fun stuff. Please like and share it. It helps a whole heap. I truly appreciate all of you guys. Thanks for joining me on this journey. Until next time.